discuss effective ways to communicate, bridge the gaps, and build long-lasting relationships within your business and life. Here are your hosts, Asha Prasad and Steve Harper.
Hey, Dr. Asha, how are you doing today?
Hey, Steve. How are you? I'm doing good. Thank you.
I am doing good. Welcome to Conversations with Asha and Steve. I am Steve Harper, and with me, as always, is my amazing co-host, Dr. Asha Prasad, the brains of the operation. Let's just be honest.
I don't know about that. I don't think
Yeah,
so, but okay.
I know about that. I know for sure that this is true. Hey, so we are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube and also on Twitter, allegedly. Uh, we, we shall see if anybody is watching when you are watching. If you guys would be so kind as to let us know if our audio is coming across crisp and clear. We've had some new equipment that we've put into place. We've got some new tweaks to the software that we've been messing with, and we have we think we have it dialed in, but we don't know until you tell us. So
Who knows? Exactly.
drop us
Otherwise, you'll be ending up reading our lips.
That's exactly. Or hearing us 3 times. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
It could be the
Echo.
voice of God. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm pretty excited. So we have a couple of folks that have just joined on Facebook. So if you guys would drop a comment, let us know our audio is sounding good. We just not that I'm unconfident that I have this set up correctly, but I'm unconfident that I have this set up correctly.
Steve is the master. Steve, you're the master of that kind of stuff.
I don't know.
Like, did you ever used to DJ? Did you ever used to DJ?
You know, it's funny because I actually the Ron Popeil just died. Do you know who that guy is? The guy that
Yes,
did
I
all the
do.
Romco products. And my
Yes.
favorite product that he ever put out was the Magic microphone. Do you remember that when you were a little
Oh,
kid?
yeah, I do. Yeah.
You could like take over your radio, like your boombox, and you could be the DJ. And it's funny you said that because I was remembering back as a kid when I got that for Christmas. I was so jazzed. In summer, I would actually take over my boombox, put it out the back window, and I would pretend that I was broadcasting all afternoon, much to the chagrin of my my neighbors. That is my
Oh, I
only
can
DJ
imagine.
stint whatsoever.
Okay. I was just curious, Steve, because it's like, yeah, I could see you doing that.
Nobody wants to hear this voice on an ongoing, consistent basis. I would probably, if I was on the radio, I would be causing accidents. I mean, that would just be.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But yeah, so this has been a fun experience to try and, we are upping our
Mhm.
game at Conversations with Asha and Steve with new capabilities,
We
new
are.
stuff, just trying to make this show better for our listeners and for those that are joining us for the live stream when we do these. So super excited to be with you today. What are we talking about on Conversations with Asha and Steve? What's our conversation that we're going to have today?
Let's see. Our conversation today is, well, I think, we wanted to talk about the importance of mental health, given some current events that have been
Yeah.
happening. And I think that this is a big one, Steve, because I don't know about you, but I've been having a lot more conversations with people about the importance of our mental health and our well-being, and are we checking in with ourselves on a regular basis to make sure, that we are on point and focused and present and all of those things. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one because I think it is topical, obviously, with Simone Biles doing what
Yeah.
she did to take a bit of a stand at the Olympics. Naomi Osaka recently on,
Yes.
in the French Open withdrew after her first round match when she said that she wouldn't
Yeah.
be doing any press because the press were causing her a lot of stress and conflict. And
Exactly.
at this stage of her life, she just doesn't need that, right? And so there's,
Right.
I think you're starting to see some examples, more sports at this juncture because, the Olympics
Right.
and Grand Slam season, et cetera, these things are happening because,
Hmm.
these events are going on and you have more, a little bit more focus on it because these are big
Right.
names in their relative sports. And they're sort of taking a stand that we haven't actually seen happen
Yeah.
previously. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think there's always been a stigma associated with it, Steve.
yeah,
It's kind of like if we can't see that someone is dealing with an actual injury, like a physical injury, then we kind of pretend in our society that it's not there.
yeah.
We're just like, no, just get over it. Just keep pushing through. And yeah.
Well, it's really funny. So we have a friend in common. I don't want to call him out by name because I don't have his permission to necessarily, put all
Hmm.
his dirty laundry Not that it's dirty. I
Well,
just say all his business. Let's just say the
his
business.
business. Exactly.
But he just, he and I were having a beer a couple of weeks ago, and he just happened to mention to me that he has been dealing with health problems related to his back, and
Hmm.
he has had it for almost as long as I've known him. He's gone through a couple of back surgeries. He's fairly dependent on painkillers, and
Hmm.
he actually now to the point is was having to walk with a cane. And he went
Oh
through a
goodness.
program recently that basically was designed to help him look at his pain differently. And
Hmm.
what he found was, as he started to share this process with a few other people, that
Hmm.
people started to look at him a little bit differently, because they started to say, well, oh, it was all in your mind, or that
Yeah.
there was some sort of deficiency, because that you basically were manifesting this pain. And the
Right.
brain is such an unbelievably crazy
Yeah.
complex muscle, right? But
Exactly.
he's done some exercises that have actually helped him get better, and to
Good.
deal with the daily pain that he's had. But he said to me, he's it's a little odd, because he doesn't want to share it with a lot of people, because then they think
Hmm.
either before you were drug seeking, or you were just looking for the
Right.
attention. And he said the mental game that happens around injury is a really tough one, because that you could actually see, because that's kind of manifested in a physical challenge for
Exactly.
him, and you could see it if you were with him. But at the end of the day, then you flip it and you say, well, now you're fixing it with your mind. That was a kind of an unusual circumstance. And then you switch gears and you talk about Simone Biles, who said,
Hmm.
look, at the end of the day, I'm not feeling it, and I can
Exactly.
recognize that I'm not in the right headspace, and I need to take a step back. And
Yeah.
so those are two very polar opposite examples, but when you think about
Hmm.
them, they're both kind of interlaced, right?
They are. I mean, you know what? It's one of those things, Steve, that I mean, I deal with on a daily basis with my patients in my chiropractic
Yeah.
practice because I look at things more holistically. It's not just about, getting rid of the pain, but it's like what is causing that pain. And 9 times out of 10, I have to tell you, whether it's pain or whatever symptoms it is, there is a mental emotional component that's always there.
Yeah.
That's always there underlining. And if we can look at that, and I start to see people transform in this way and be able to get rid of their pain
Yeah.
and get feeling better, because once you address that, and it's really interesting because some of the comments that I get a lot of times, patients will be like, why are you asking me that? Because I'll ask them,
Yeah.
what's going on in your life? What's happening in your life? Are you stressed out? Are there things that are happening that, are keeping you up at night or making you anxious? Or and it's so interesting because they're just like, no one's ever asked me that. Why are you asking that? I'm like, because it's all related. I mean, your
It is.
brain, your mind is impacting that in a big way. And I think it's time that we really do in our society get okay with talking about these things and not seeing it as a weakness. Because I know one of the things that, I mean, even for myself growing up in the culture, my cultural background, it's kind of like, don't admit anything is wrong.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with something, keep it hidden, do it privately, you know what I mean? Like, don't, basically it was seen as a weakness,
Yeah.
basically.
Which
I
causes
mean,
shame,
ultimately, and
right?
that's
I
what
mean,
you
ultimately causes
exactly, which
shame for
causes
them.
shame.
Yeah. So,
Exactly.
so that's super interesting, because, it is one of those things that people have a hard time talking about. And then
Yeah.
when you do talk about it, you often are worried about the judgment that other people have for you, which is kind of
Yes.
what my buddy was talking about. Right now, it's like, well, now
Yeah.
people are like, well, it was
Exactly.
all in your head. Now you're like, were you a head
Yeah.
case? I mean, you don't just
Yeah.
turn pain off. And it's like, well, yeah, you can to a certain
Yeah.
degree,
You
right?
can.
It's, you and I
Exactly.
talk about meditation on this, show a lot.
Hmm.
And, one of the things that I have gotten pretty good at myself is, you have these little, twitches or itches or whatever when you're
Yeah.
trying to still yourself. And,
Yeah.
a lot of the meditation practices tell you that when you notice or sense that, that's
Hmm.
something going on in your body, but you just return to breathing. You put your focus there as
Exactly.
opposed to in the other capacity.
Right.
And it's amazing how that does change, right? I
It
literally can
does.
overcome the itch or that desire to like, dig in there like I, want to. And
Yeah.
you can overcome that with your brain. And so the challenge that he's, experienced with the pain, I
Yeah.
can see that there's a lot to this program that he's gone through that's helped him kind of rewire and understand and appreciate the approach to pain.
Yeah, it's really important. I remember this was not too long ago, and I've said this many times before, but I've had conversations with other healthcare professionals, and a lot of times, as a doctor of chiropractic, there's a lot of stigma in it, in whatever country you are in the world, because they look at us kind of like, you guys are kind of doing this and you're kind of doing that. What exactly do you stand for? That kind of thing, because you have a variety. But it's interesting because I was on the phone with a neurologist and we were discussing a patient that I had referred to him, that I'm like, there is something definitely on a physical level going on, but
Oh,
this guy's
wow.
under a lot of stress and a lot, and so it's interesting because he said to me, he said, well, Asha, I think it's just all in his head. I said, you're exactly right, because the nervous system is
Is in
part
your
of the
head.
brain is part of that. It's in your head, exactly. And he just stopped for a moment, and then he just started laughing. He's like, oh my God. He's like, you know what? He said, you're crazy. I said, yes. And that's in my head too. I said, but I just, saying something like that,
Yeah.
though, is kind of a judge. It's making a judgment. And I wanted to wake him up to be like, you know what you're saying right now. Yeah. It's physiologically, yes, it is coming from the brain,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's figure out what we can do to help this person. And so, but I understand it is tough to admit, especially in our society where you feel, I mean, look at what happened with the two athletes that you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
the judgment, the
Oh, yeah.
comments, the things that people I thought, my goodness, they're it's like, can you I think everybody, actually, Steve, I mean, let's be honest, I think each and every one of us at some point in time has felt that way,
Oh,
no
yeah.
matter what it is. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
we're not Olympic athletes or pro tennis players, but we have felt that way. And if we can just kind of step back and think about, God, wouldn't it have been great if somebody had compassion to us, that it was okay for us to not participate or not do something,
Absolutely.
instead of throwing out those judgments. But yeah,
Well, and,
it's
and, and I think,
yeah,
as a society, we're not cultured again. I think that this is a wake up
no,
call to look at this as something completely different. If, like, one of your employees came to you and said, hey, look, I have a drug problem or an alcohol problem and I need to go to
yeah,
treatment, we're finally at a point where those things actually are being viewed as diseases because they are, right?
exactly.
But mental health is the dirty
Hmm.
secret that nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to think that the world is changing to the point where if somebody's really struggling, and it could be on the job, it could be at home, it could
Hmm.
be a manifestation of all of that. I know I've
Yeah.
been there. I come in and have to, my office, and I know that I'm not on my A game. You know,
Hmm.
would it have been better for me to not be here or to have just come in to finish what I need to do and then go? One, it
Right.
would be better for my team, and B, and two, it would be,
Right.
B. One and then B. Two.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm that guy. Okay, let me give you three examples. One,
Yeah.
B, and the asterisk. Anyway, so
Yeah.
but the reality is to be able to tell them, hey, look, I need a break. I need to walk away. I need to,
Yeah.
I need to refocus or just step away from the craziness for a bit
Yeah.
and allow myself that space rather than bite somebody's head off because they're annoying me or they're
Exactly.
asking a question at an inopportune time or everybody's piling a bunch of stuff on me and then I just, kind of like, a lit fuse, I explode.
Yeah.
Not that I do that, so I just I could have the
Just as
tendency.
an example, I mean,
I
could
mean, not me, but
hypothetically.
somebody else, the fictitious Steve, could do that. But people handle the stress and the mental weight much differently. And I think with Simone
Yes.
Biles to actually step up and say, look, uh, you know, I think where the criticism came for a lot of folks was that
Hmm.
she had taken a place in the team event for taking it away from one
Yeah.
of her teammates that she could have done it had she announced it earlier somebody else could have been plugged
Right.
into her spot. That was unfortunate and I don't know that necessarily she was thinking about that. I don't know when she told
Right.
the, whatever they have, the coach or the manager for the team, that
Yeah.
this is what she's going to do. That was an unfortunate circumstance because somebody else could have
Yeah.
participated in her place. But, if you're not thinking clearly, the logistics of, your
Yeah.
decision, you may not be thinking of those ramifications either. So you kind of have to give her a little grace and patience
Yeah.
there. But then for her to be able to say, look, it isn't, we're not robots here. We're human beings, and we go
Exactly.
through a lot of things, and the job that we do is dangerous, and it is.
Yes.
I mean, for her to do that, I had a tremendous amount of respect for her. But then, like you said, to see the venom that came across,
Yes.
and it's interesting because I think you look at that and you think, wow, that's kind of how people respond and react. Clearly, you've never had a
Hmm.
bad day or a bad week or a bad month. It
Yeah.
must be great to walk in your shoes. But
Yeah.
I really felt for her because it was a
Yeah.
challenge. And I got to say, I feel, really proud of what Naomi Osaka did at the French Open, where
Yes.
she just basically said, if you're going to find me, for not showing up and talking to the press when I'm telling you that this is a source of stress and
Right.
it's weighing on me mentally, and I'm not going to be able to perform at my best, so I'm stepping away. And I
Yeah.
think the officials at the French Open probably rethink the fact that they were pushing so hard.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a counterpoint to this, and why I wanted to raise it to you is, when do you figure, like, as a coach, whether you're an
Hmm.
athletic coach or whether you're a performance coach
Right.
like we are,
Yeah.
when do you know to push, or when do you know you've pushed
Hmm.
too far? And I think there's examples that have come up in gymnastics about those athletes that have been pushed way
Yes.
beyond their both their physical and their mental comfort levels, which is unfortunate. And then certainly organizers of events who have people that, obviously the Olympics is the exception, no fans this year, but the French Open, people are paying big money to come see this player, and they
Exactly.
know this, and they're putting a huge amount of pressure trying to bully that player into
Yeah.
continuing to just go with the flow. And so I have a tremendous amount of appreciation for what she did, because it was a huge decision,
Yeah.
right, for her to do that and
It
then not
is.
participate in Wimbledon, et cetera. But when is too much for those? And you got to think, if that's the pressure that gets put on in the moment, what's the pressure
Yeah.
building up to that, decision?
Exactly. I mean, there are places, there are times before that that it's already been building up. And you know what? I think it's incredibly mature for both of these women to have stepped up and said this. I mean, they're young women.
Hmm.
They were able to, able to say, wait a second, stop. This is affecting me in a bad way. And I know there are always consequences, of course, Steve, whenever you make those decisions, especially in your profession and when you're, a performer, basically, whether that's on the stage or whether that's on the court, whatever it is, you are a performer. And so there is that, you feel the sense of responsibility.
Sure, sure.
But I feel like our society as a whole right now, and it's not just right now, it's been there for such a long time. We are so driven by the almighty dollar, the money,
Yeah,
and
well
so
said.
that, and people will get bullied and guilted into doing things that they don't want to do, that they just don't have the capacity to do, or that they're pushing themselves so far beyond their capacity or their well-being for that. And I
Yeah,
think we have to rethink, I think we have to step back and rethink about that. I mean, yes, absolutely. I can imagine it would be disappointing if you did pay money to go see that person specifically. But at the same time, at the end of the day, we're not robots, just like what they were saying. It's, these are human beings.
yeah,
And if we can have that compassion, I mean, I know for myself, I can think of a handful of times that people have pushed me way beyond, and I have given into it
hmm,
out of guilt,
yeah.
out of feeling of obligation, out of whatever it was. And it's like, did that serve me? Absolutely not.
You're right.
Absolutely not. And I probably paid for it tenfold with my own well-being, maybe taking longer time to recover, or not being able to sleep, or amount of stress or whatever. And I think it's important as coaches, no matter what, what kind of coach you are, you've got to figure it out for yourself too, where your limits are, and start to understand that. Because if you don't, then you're going to push other people way beyond. You're not going to be able to recognize the signs and signals that people give you
Yep.
that it's getting too much. Do you
Yeah,
know what I mean, Steve? It's
definitely.
it's yeah.
as a soccer coach, I've, coached soccer for a long time. And,
Yeah.
I've had those super aggressive parents that say, my kid needs to play whether they're injured, or et cetera. And I had a
Yeah.
player at one time, not too long ago, that has a pretty overbearing father. And I knew
Hmm.
that personality type. I understood it and could also relate to the amount of pressure, mental pressure that was on this kid every time he took the field.
Yeah.
Because if he didn't do well, he was going to hear it. And there was he was injured outside of one of our training sessions, which meant that he couldn't practice and he couldn't play. And
Hmm.
this particular parent called me and said he needs to start on Saturday, and he needs to
Hmm.
learn to to just overcome the pain and get back on the horse, so to speak, and trying to
Hmm.
sell me on on the concept of why this is a teachable moment, etc. And we got to the field at the game, and I asked the player, I said, "How you doing?" He said, "My dad says I'm doing great." I said, "I didn't ask how your dad said. How are you doing?" And he
How are
wasn't
you?
he wasn't confident. He was in a
Yeah.
position where he was still struggling with the injury, and it was obviously putting him at risk. And
Hmm.
the one thing I have always done for my players is I will put their physical and their mental health above all else. That this we're not
Yes.
going to the World Cup tomorrow, right? And it's just
Right.
not going to occur. So I told him
Right.
he was out of the lineup, and he was like, "My dad is going to kill me." I said, "It's my decision." And I said, "That's the
Yeah.
bottom line." And so I went and talked to this dad, and he went nuts. Like, he was
Oh
pissed.
gosh.
And I
Yeah.
said, remind me, did we punch our ticket to the World Cup yesterday? Are we, is there any college recruiter here looking at your kid today? Because if so, that might change my
Yeah.
decision, right? And he said, "Well,
Yeah.
no, of course not." But he needs to man up and realize that he has to overcome
Oh
this, and
gosh. Yeah.
he's just scared. And it's like, no, you sort of need to look at what your son is telling you, and you need to man up and look at the consequences of you putting so much pressure on him.
Exactly.
He pushed himself.
Yeah.
That's how he got injured. That's how it happened. And really, at the end of the day, you have to respect the boundaries. And no matter what,
Yeah.
it's not your call, it's my call. And so you can, huff
Yeah.
and puff and threaten to walk away and take your kid and, never come back, etc. Feel free to do
Right.
so. It's a free country. But his mental and physical health is way more important to me. And this
Yeah.
guy just like, you could tell in the moment it was really irritating to him, but he did come back to me a few days later and he said, "You're right." He
Hmm.
said, "I think that was the best decision." He said, "You always have my son and all the rest of the players.
Hmm.
They're you have them, the best intentions for them." And I
Right.
needed that in the moment. And I would like to
Okay.
think as they move on with their relationship, maybe that was a teachable moment. It was, maybe for him.
Exactly.
But I did notice, the last, times that he played for me, that he was less pressure on the kid. But it's
Good.
amazing how, those types of situations, whether it be from our parents or our friends or
Yep.
an environment, like a tournament or, like you said, an organized activity where people will put immense pressure on you, bully you to perform,
Yeah.
even when that, you or the athlete is not ready mentally. And you
Yeah.
have to be, hopefully, confident enough in your decision to say, "Look, I know my limits and I know when I'm not going to do it." And that I think is key. And I see it a lot in youth sports, unfortunately, that, they're not old enough to make those decisions. They don't know what they're
Exactly.
talking about. They don't know how far they can push, and there's all these, these sports motivational kind
Hmm.
of coaches that say, you don't know how hard and far you can push your body. Yeah, most people do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Most people do.
and at the
You
end
know
of the
what? No
day,
matter how young or how old you are,
yeah,
you
but
feel it.
but the funny thing is that's the physical aspect, but you have no idea what you're doing to
Yes.
that brain and that mental,
Yeah.
that mental strength. And by
Yeah.
making somebody question whether they're strong enough or they're good enough or whatever, and or
Exactly.
that they have to perform because insert whatever
Right.
BS reason they give,
Yeah.
you're really putting that person at risk because that could be a really, really bad situation.
Yeah. That's very true, Stephen. That is good. And I do think sometimes it does take somebody stepping up and saying, "Listen, how this is what's happening. You need to look at this. And I know people get upset, and especially when you're really challenging a parent or someone that, or even a player's coach, that you're just like, no, we're doing this, we're doing something different. It kind of throws a wrench into it for people, because some people are just so, maybe they've learned that pattern from their parents, teachers,
Upbringing.
whoever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's like it's really difficult, but we've got to get off that autopilot sometimes, and be kind of awakened to say, wait a second, there is totally a different way. And I think that that's what, I'm hoping for the future, that we, and honestly, I think right now, I mean, look at what we're, maybe slowly coming out of with the pandemic. I don't know if we're really coming out of it, but whatever's going on with it, whatever, it's shifting. It's
Yeah.
riding another wave.
Yeah.
But think about, like, mentally what this has done for people, and
Yeah.
different people are responding differently. Some people have been able to, be okay, relatively okay, and ride the wave of it. And there are other people that are really struggling out there.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I mean, that's an
that's a
excellent
really,
point
it's a real
because,
thing.
yeah, there are people that are, they feel like we're going right back down the same rabbit hole, and so they're
Exactly.
like, especially in our environment in Austin, there are people that are being
Hmm.
ridiculed because they have concerns about whether you
Yeah.
wear a mask or not wear a mask, right? I don't want to get into that
Yeah.
debate necessarily, but there's a whole bully
Right.
component there. But I've been
Yeah.
recently talking to entrepreneurs that are really struggling with some folks that aren't ready to come back, and they're concerned
Yes.
about their health.
Exactly.
And you've got the typical leader reaction like, well, no, they just like the cushiness of working from
Yeah.
home and blah, blah, blah. And so they
Yeah.
discount the mental attitude about that. And that's also a form of bullying. And
That
I just
is.
talked to a business owner earlier this week that said, yeah, I'm really thinking of making a change with some of my employees. And I said, before you do that, maybe you ought to look at making a change with your thinking. Because really, if we've
Yes.
got
Yeah.
examples here of people that have real serious concerns, and unless you know
Yeah.
the complete and utter family history of every person that employee is going to touch, you have no idea whether they're
Yeah.
concerned about their kid that has cystic
Exactly.
fibrosis, or their
Yes.
grandmother that's got cancer,
Yeah.
or an aunt that's coming to visit that has just waited a year and a half to be safe enough to come, and then now you're putting them at risk because
Exactly.
you're exposing. I mean, we could speak on this for hours, but that
Yeah.
is a really big factor as well, because there has been a huge
Yeah.
mental drain, really as a consequence of what the COVID
Yeah.
situation has done for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's time that we try to, as individuals and also our communities, start to get more aware of this and take it seriously when
Yes.
someone is saying something, that something is not right, or they're not feeling quite with it. You got to take it seriously and pay attention.
Yep.
I think it's super important.
I agree. And as business leaders,
Yeah.
a lot of entrepreneurs and business leaders follow this podcast, and tune in for the live stream, which we greatly, greatly appreciate. But as leaders of our organizations, we need to be having serious conversations with our HR
Yeah.
departments to ensure that we have the proper
Yes.
policies and approaches to managing this, because the
Yes.
landscape is shifting in the way that we did it even a year ago.
Hmm.
No longer those rules necessarily apply, and I suspect that you're going to
Right.
start to see more of this come out in laws that actually protect the employee, or give the same level of protections like we do for the Family Leave
Hmm.
Act, at least here in the U.S. But at the end of the day, I think that what do we do, and how do we take this this thing out of the deep dark corner, and not make something like, hey, I need some time, I need to reframe,
Yeah.
or I might need some help. And so how can the company play an active role in not, having that person have any shame associated with asking for help? And number two,
Yeah.
provide the level of resources and necessarily the time off to be able to address whatever they're dealing with. I think it's important,
Yeah.
and leaders need to be proactive and be thinking about that, so that this becomes part of the culture. That's why people want to work for your organization, because this is a place that doesn't judge me.
Right.
It's a place that I want to come and put my time and energy. But if I
Yeah.
am dealing with more mental stress or challenges than I can deal with, they either provide me the
Hmm.
support or the resources, or both,
Yeah.
to be able to go deal with that, and I don't have to worry about retribution or losing my job.
Exactly. I think that that's a real thing. And I mean, you know, at really, I mean, if you look at it, healthy employees, and I do mean healthy on every
Yeah,
level, mental, emotional, physical, all of it, are going to be happier employees, and you're going to have a much better culture in your company. They're going to be more
absolutely.
productive. They're going to be more, you know what I mean? It's a win-win for everybody in that regard. And I mean, why wouldn't you want to have everybody on your team working as optimally as possible? Not only working, but functioning as a person, as a
Yeah.
human being,
Yeah. Absolutely.
to be the best version that they can be. I mean, that's what we ultimately want for one another. And yeah,
Well, and
it's hard though, Steve. Sometimes we get caught up, right, as
yeah.
business leaders
Yeah.
because we're looking at,
The
the
bottom.
numbers or this
Yeah.
or that, the bottom
The
line. It's
bottom
like,
line.
oh, wait a minute, but
Well,
yeah,
I mean, it's not nothing to joke about, obviously, but there's a
mm,
number of workplace shootings that obviously are
yeah,
indications that, hey, had somebody been paying
yeah,
attention, that there might have been
yes,
maybe a different outcome. But and that's sad that it
yeah,
has to go that far to that end of the gamut to be able to
it's true.
illustrate that example. But clearly, somebody's struggling and having challenges, and
Yeah,
that's such a huge mental shift and break that you're going to come in and cause harm to a coworker or to your managers.
yeah,
But
that's
for individual companies and leaders, you have to look at that. You have to consider yourself. Okay, it's not
yeah,
I'm not running FedEx and I'm worried about a service depot shooting in a big complex. I have to worry about my
exactly.
3-4 person company, and that means
Yes,
that as leaders, I think that you have to be mentally engaged yourself to ensure that you are
yeah,
not just abdicating it to HR, which is kind of what I maybe implied earlier, and I want to kind of correct that.
hmm,
I want you to have an open dialogue and conversation with HR so that we can say, how do we identify these things? How do we make it a safe
hmm,
environment and be able to continually put these processes and approaches out there so people feel comfortable
yeah,
to leverage and take advantage of them? But then I think as an engaged leader, you have to get out from behind your desk and you have to go walk the floor, talk to people on an
yes,
ongoing, consistent basis. And you know when something is off. If you have a good,
yes,
connection with a manager or individual employee, and you just know
yeah,
that normally they're super bubbly or they're very focused,
hmm,
there's obvious signs for a lot of folks that you can sometimes pick up. And just the simple
yep,
question, "Are you doing okay? I mean, let's go grab some coffee. Let's have a talk. No, you're not in trouble. You just
yeah,
seem off today. And making those situations, creating an environment where those conversations can happen with an ongoing, consistent basis. Sometimes it
yeah,
could be, hey, I'm just dealing with a real serious problem. I don't know how to fix it or whatever at work, or I got a big project and a looming deadline.
yeah,
And sometimes just making it okay to talk about that with your leaders.
yeah,
Then that has value. But then also, I think when somebody is not ultimately being actually honest with you. Like they came in 2 or 3 days, they just look
hmm,
disheveled or whatever. They're clearly maybe having something going on outside of the office, and they may need
exactly.
some time to deal with it. And you don't have to
Yeah,
pry, and you don't have to necessarily. I mean, you can be a good assertive leader by saying, "Hey, look, I just want you to know I'm here. If you want to talk,
hmm,
there's the process. If you need a few days off or longer to deal
right,
with whatever you're dealing with, we're here to support you because we want you here, right? And we want you the best
right,
part of you here." And I think that leaders have to have the emotional understanding to be able to know how to
yeah,
convey that message, not from a corporate policy perspective, just as a
yeah,
fallback, but as part of your leadership style.
yeah. I think so too, Steve. And you know what? That's why I think it's so very important as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as, even managers. We've got to do the work ourselves. We've got to be constantly evolving and working on ourselves and making sure that we are in check with ourselves as individuals,
Yep.
because that's the only way that we can step up and be there for our team members, our companies. That's the only way that we can do that and pass that along. I've seen so many people that don't really take good care of themselves or don't really do the work themselves, but then expect, that they're going to be able to help other people. It just doesn't work. Eventually you're going to burn your own self out, or you're just going to lose, like, lose actually just kind of the overview of what exactly is happening. And
Yeah,
you're not going to be able to tune into those little cues that you can tell when somebody's off.
you're right.
So I think it's super important too, is that we've got that. And that's why it's so important. That's why, we talk about on this podcast and, many times about what we can do as
Yeah,
individuals as well. What can we do to work on ourselves? And that's why, because you're building your own, skill set, your own tools, basically, and strengthening those, mastering those. So that way you can be there for your people as well.
Absolutely. And I would say, not
Yeah.
even just from a leadership perspective, for anybody that's out there that's
Hmm.
paying attention and listening to what we have to say, I think it's important that you put this front and center for yourself now, because I think
Yeah.
just because it's being, played out in the press by, well-known and highly paid athletes doesn't mean that the issue isn't just as critical and as important for your own life. I think being able to,
Exactly.
like you said, as a leader, to be able to be able to empathize and understand what's going on with other people, and to be that tuned
Hmm.
in, you obviously have to put the work in for yourself. But I also think there's no shame in the game to be able to do it on an ongoing, consistent basis as
Yeah.
an individual. And I think,
Yeah.
we've talked about it. You can go back and watch several of our episodes where we talk about things like meditation, separate, things that you need to do to separate yourself from the
Hmm.
stress. And we would love, if you've got questions or concerns for your own life, reach out to us on
Hmm.
Conversations with Asha and Steve, or join us on the Facebook under Conversations with Asha and Steve, and reach out to us. And both Asha and I have,
Yeah.
would be happy to help and guide any way we can. But I think even for ourselves, and you and I've talked about this, the mental, the power of
Hmm.
preparing and sort of perfecting our mental game is an ongoing,
Hmm.
consistent base, day,
Yes,
sorry,
it is.
ongoing, consistent thing you have to do every day. And I think it's
Yeah.
real key that you focus on some activities that help you lower your stress, help you reset your mental game, help
Hmm.
you figure out how to deal with some of the things that are going on. But if you are feeling like there's too much, that's the time when you need to have a good, set of people that you can reach out to, and you
Yeah.
have good friends like we've talked about here in the work environment. You've got a good, supporting management team that understands and has no judgment, but you've got somebody, a lifeline that you can go to, because you can't
Yeah.
handle some circumstances on your own, right? You can't have
No,
you
you
can't
just can't.
you just don't. And I will give an example, personal example. I've had a lot of stuff going on in my life. Dr. Asha sends me these little great, quotes and these these great videos, and she sent me a whole list of dad jokes just to completely change my day. But somehow intuitively, you knew on that day that I was really struggling with something, and that's how
Yeah.
good connections and good friendships are. And so it is
Yeah.
something that you want those kinds of people in your life, both your personal and your professional life. And there's no shame in working on that every day for yourself, so that you can also be that for somebody else, right? Be that lifeline for somebody else.
Exactly. No, it's so true, Steve. It's, I mean, you know what? And as we work on ourselves as individuals, no matter what position you have, it doesn't matter. I mean, just as individuals, it's so important that we pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I always talk to people because they're just like, what do I need to do for my mental well-being? Like they're just like, why would I do that? I'm like, do you eat breakfast in the morning? Do you eat meals? I'm like, why do you do that? Why do you eat food every day? It's the same thing. It's like, what, you know what I mean? It's like if you're going to do that for your body so you won't be hungry and cranky all day, you can take a few minutes to do some things for yourself too on a mental level.
Absolutely. And it's as important,
Yeah.
right? That's that's
Yes, it is.
sustis I can never say that word. What is it? Sustenance?
Sustenance?
Yes.
Sustenance? That word.
There are just
Sustenance.
there are just some words that make me sound like Yosemite Sam, and that's one of them. So I'm not even going to try. Just anyway. But yes, it's you do that every 3 times a
Yeah,
day theoretically to support your physical
exactly.
body. You also need to do certain things. Say the word. You need to have
Sustenance.
yes, for your
No, I'm
mental
sorry.
your mental health as well. Thank you. See,
Yeah,
that's why we're such good, supporters of one
exactly.
another. Yeah, I don't know the big words. You know the big words. So, we have a couple of people that are watching. We definitely appreciate you tuning in on our live stream. We honestly can't tell whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, or on Twitter, but we would love to hear what you're thinking about this topic, this conversation. We've been talking about Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka, the ability for them to take this stand
Mhm.
to preserve their own mental well-being. And the importance of it. We talked about leadership and why leaders need to be having these conversations with their HR departments to actually be able to create an environment and a culture of openness around mental health. And
Mhm.
just as important and critical as if you were an employee that had the flu, being able to provide policies and
Exactly.
guidelines to take care of whatever needs to be taken care of, so that you can come back and be a great member of the team. But we're curious if you have any questions, any thoughts on this topic. Do you agree with what Simone Biles did, and not? We're using that as a kind of an example because it's been most recent on the Olympics. But she did
Hmm.
come back, and she actually participated in one event and got the bronze. And she said,
Yes.
the bronze in
Yes.
some capacities tasted better than the gold. And I think, for her, that's probably
Yeah.
true.
That is probably so. Yeah. No, we'd love to hear from you because I'm curious what people are starting to kind of think about that as you reflect upon your own life. Where are you, with your mental health? How do
Exactly.
you feel? Do you feel strong? Do you feel, that you could work on some things? What's going on? So we'd love to hear from you. I guess, Steve, people can drop a comment, of course, if you're catching us live. Thank you so much for joining us. You
Yes.
can drop a comment in the comment box. Yeah.
Well, I think we're getting comments. I'm not sure because for whatever reason, we normally get them and we're
Hmm.
not seeing them flow through to our control panel today. So if
Okay.
you happen to put a comment or you're catching this on the rebroadcast, we encourage you to still leave a comment because we check that very regularly. Dr. Asha and I will come back to the
Yeah.
Facebook stream or YouTube and be sure to respond. And just real quickly, and we can move on for a second. But if you have questions, Asha, how could people email you directly if they didn't want to put it out in public, but they had a question for
Yeah.
you about this particular topic?
Hmm. Well, definitely. So people can email us through our website, conversationswithashandsteve.com, or they can contact me through my website, theprasadmethod.com. And they can just reach out to me there or even on social media, Facebook, send it in a messenger or something like that. If you have any questions or concerns, or if you need any guidance or any help with anything, yeah, definitely reach out to us.
Yeah.
And you, Steve, they can reach us through your website too, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Ripplecentral.com is my website. And if you have questions, that you want to direct specifically to me, you could just send it to Steve at ripplecentral.com. And I respond to all my emails personally. I wanted to share that because I think a lot of times, again, this is something that I think a lot of people suffer with in the dark. And I think that they really
Yes.
don't know exactly how or who to turn to. And as you're trying to establish that and trying to figure out how to address it, recognize and understand there's no shame in it, and that you need somebody to talk to. And if you don't have anybody in your immediate circle, or you don't necessarily know how to
Hmm.
or want to bring it up at work, we understand that. We understand that situation.
Yeah.
So both Dr. Asha and I will make ourselves available at any point to, at least, provide some input and guidance. This is such an important topic. That would come from us at free of charge because I think this is so
Yeah.
critical that and I think a lot of people struggle. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty out there in the world, whether it be the
Yeah,
COVID
there is.
situation, what the stresses of. I mean, I actually just I'm sure you're dealing with it over there in your part of the world, but the stresses that parents are going through right now about the mental stress
Yeah,
of whether I put my kids back in school, have them
exactly.
stay virtual, what the long term ramifications of those
Yeah,
decisions are. That weighs on the kids, and they have mental stresses over that, but also weighs on the parents significantly as well. And that's another source and level of stress that people are we've never dealt with in
exactly.
this kind of situation. Now we're dealing with it for coming on the second year, which is just
I
absolutely
know.
insane. So there are a lot of things that are stressors out there for everyone. And it's not just, Simone Biles deciding that she does or doesn't want to compete because she's,
Yeah.
needs to take a break. There's the things that we have to deal with on an ongoing, consistent basis in our own lives. And, if you're a business leader or entrepreneur and, you're worried about the economy or where it's going or what it'll do, or did I, come back and
Hmm.
think we were coming back so quickly that, I needed to ramp up and hire more people. And now all of a sudden things might come to a screeching halt at some point again. Like
Yeah,
there's stresses out
exactly.
there. I mean, that just might be my
There are.
stress, but I mean,
No, it's not.
but these things are
Yeah,
important to talk about. And the reason we wanted to bring it up is it's a fairly controversial topic still because, mental health is
it
not
is.
something that people, like you said very early on in our conversation, that,
Mm,
that if you don't have a physical injury and you're not, keeled over and, limping, people can't see a
exactly.
physical ailment, then they don't think anything's going on. And I can tell you for
Yeah,
facts that, there's a story behind everybody that somebody's dealing with something. And there's probably a
yeah,
lot of a lot of situations where it's weighing on them very significantly mentally.
yeah. No, I agree. I agree, Steve. And it is one of those things. It is very important definitely reach out to us if you need any guidance or any help or any questions on this, because I understand sometimes, we're still not over the hurdle a lot of times to reach out to somebody also.
Yeah,
That, sometimes that's the hardest step. But once you make that step, it'll really help you get on your way of getting the help that you need.
absolutely. Well, we just got a
Yeah.
thumbs up from Uma, and I will completely destroy this last name, Krishnamurthy. Krishnamurthy.
Yeah,
I,
Uma. Yeah,
yeah,
I
Uma.
know her.
Thank you for joining us, Uma. I apologize. I will definitely probably not get the job of being your professional announcer at all your big events, but I mean,
You did pretty good, Steve.
pretty good.
You did pretty good. You did.
How far off was I? Tell me what the.
No, you were good. Uma Krishnamurthy. See, you
Oh,
did very well.
hey,
See?
see, I need to have
Yeah,
confidence in myself. I don't have it.
exactly.
That's why I have these calls with you so that I can get more confident. But yeah,
Yeah.
Uma, if you have any questions for us or anyone that's
Hmm.
watching on any of the different platforms that we're live streaming to, we certainly welcome them. And like we said, and just as a reminder, not to beat a dead horse here, but if you're catching this on the restream or you're thinking that you want to comment, but we're not live, doesn't matter because Dr. Asha and I seem to live on the internets, and so we can respond in
It's our
pretty.
second home.
It is our second home. Go home. Okay, I'll get on
Yeah,
Facebook.
exactly. There you go.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll definitely respond, and we certainly appreciate you guys participating. Let me ask you one question before we wrap up.
Sure.
As an individual, and
Hmm.
you're a medical professional, so you've seen this and probably had these situations with your patients in the past.
Hmm.
What are some signs that we as individuals know that we are starting to need to really maybe address something from a mental perspective? Excuse me, mental health perspective. Things
Hmm.
are weighing on us. Things are,
Yeah.
starting to, mount up, and
Yeah.
how we're dealing or handling with things. Are there signs that you might be able to give folks that look, this might be, you're coming to a pivotal crossroad, or maybe you need to take
Hmm.
a little bit of a step back. What is in your professional recommendation are some of those things that we need to be aware of?
I mean, some of the things that I've seen more often is people getting distracted, not being able to keep up with their agenda, being overwhelmed, forgetting appointments. I mean, it's like people just kind of space out. They're just like, oh my God, I'd never do that. They start
Ah,
to
yeah.
do that also. Yeah, I mean, or sleeping a lot or not sleeping. One or the other. Either they're sleeping a lot more, like they're just so exhausted, or they're just not sleeping at all. Getting some physical symptoms, headaches. There's certain things like that, but I think one of the biggest things, Steve, is that people getting distracted and not being able, like,
Mm,
it's just like it's so overwhelming, like things are going out of control. They're missing appointments. They're not showing up to things where normally they would be there, right on time, or even 10 minutes before, 15 minutes before, whatever it is. I think those are big things to start noticing. And people will start calling you on those things too. And you got to listen because people are actually pointing out to you, hey, maybe I need to check in. I need to slow down and address what's going on.
wow, those are great. I mean,
Yeah,
to a certain degree, you're kind of sabotaging yourself
you
in
are.
some respects, and
You are.
so you need to
It
pay
is.
attention to those things as they're starting to occur, because those are signs of something's amiss, right?
Exactly.
So when you start to see
Exactly.
that, what would be a couple of recommendations for you, if I'm identifying, and I am
Hmm.
greatly with several of those things you just mentioned? I'm like, oh crap. So what do you do? What do you recommend? Somebody who says, hey, look, maybe I don't think I need to go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or I may
Right.
not need to quite get to the point of seeking professional guidance, but that may not necessarily be true either, right? So, what do you recommend
Right.
in those next steps?
I mean, I do think, Steve, you know what? A lot of times it's not for everybody to go immediately to a professional to go talk to them. Because again, there's that comfort level. First of all, you have to recognize that there is something going on. A lot of times people spend a lot of time in denial, that they just avoidance, they just like do everything to avoid it. But I think it's maybe start off with, if you are capable to ask your boss or able to do that for a couple of days off. You know what? I'm going through something. I need to have some downtime, and give yourself that time to evaluate what's going on, check in with how you're feeling. Find, if you have people in your life that you can trust and that you can talk with and say, hey, have you been noticing? me acting differently, or have you noticed different things? Can we talk, have an open conversation, without anybody getting defensive or anything like that? Just can we talk about this and find out? And then I think from there, then you'll start to see what is really going on. I mean, I think that those are the biggest thing is I always tell people, check out a little bit. You like, just
Hmm.
check out a little bit if you can. Just take a step back, because the thing about that is that if you keep on going, and I've seen this time and time again, I've done it myself as well. If you keep on going and you keep pushing, you're going to make decisions that you regret. You're going to make, and in all aspects, you're going to make mistakes, maybe even ruin some relationships that you didn't necessarily want to. It's start um you're going to start actually destructive behaviors without even
Wow.
knowing it, and then
Wow.
you're going to sabotage yourself even more.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So that's,
so
I mean, some really good things to pay attention to, and some good advice on what to do when you start to notice these, because you will, right? I mean,
yeah,
when you
yes,
start missing appointments or you start acting
yes,
erratically, you will figure it out pretty quickly because people will respond and react to that
yes, they
that
do.
behavior. At least they do to me. I'm just saying.
They do to me too.
I mean, so that's like a time, like Dr. Asha says, "Hey, whoa, whoa,
Yes,
whoa, 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 yeah, I need to take a time out. Sorry,
I need a
I'm
timeout.
gonna put myself in the corner and I'm gonna think about what I'm doing here." And
Exactly.
but
Yeah,
it's not, not making a joke of it, but it's really important because I do think that
it
sometimes
is.
we get so busy and we often have such um, hurried lives that we often don't notice
Yes.
those things until they become big things. And what you really want to be
Yeah.
able to do is be a little more in tune with your emotional well-being and your mental, your mental
Yeah.
health. And I think that's important. Just having this conversation, sharing what we've been sharing today, I think is
Hmm.
very critical to helping ensure that that's the case. So I think,
Right.
as people think about that, we definitely, hope that you walk away with something of value and power here that you can put to work in your own life. And if you happen to work for a company that is going to have challenges or issues with understanding that
Yeah.
they need to start addressing these things, putting them into the HR policy, starting to address how this form of mental health is just as critical as your physical health.
Yeah.
Let us know those folks too. I mean, don't necessarily have to refer us, but Dr. Asha and I would love to have conversations with those leaders, and we can just come at it and
Absolutely.
just say, hey, we know somebody said that you guys aren't that good at this, and we would be happy to come in and maybe do a workshop with their executive team or their HR department, and
Absolutely.
let them know, hey, look, the landscape is shifting, and there are
Yeah.
things that your employees are going to expect of you coming forward that is going to happen with more regularity. And I think that these are things that you need to start having those conversations, start planning for and addressing. So, we'd be happy to, kind of be the 1-2 punch in that regard to help them
Hmm.
start to see the light there. I have to say, we got another thumbs up from,
Hmm.
and I'm going to butcher this name, but they're related. Gayatri, Gayatri,
Gayatri
Gathri.
Krishnamurti, that they're sisters. These are two wonderful women. I tell you, they're located in India.
Ah,
They are really two wonderful, incredibly powerful women.
well,
Yes.
tell them, my ability to pronounce their name should not go to my character. thank you for thank you
Steve, you
thank you
did
for joining
great.
us.
I'm telling you, you did great.
Yeah,
Thank you
well,
for
yeah,
joining.
yeah, and thank them for joining us from India, and we've had a few folks from around the world join us, which is great. Like we said,
Yeah,
and just as we wrap up here, final reminder: if you see this on the rebroadcast, you're catching this on the podcast. The podcast folks, you're getting them on all sorts of different platforms. Our reach
yeah,
is going long and wide, which is awesome,
it
and
is.
we love that. But feel free to drop us a note. You can email me at steve@ripplecentral.com. And Asha, if you have questions or they want to contact you directly,
Yeah, they can. Yeah, they can definitely email me at info@theprasadmethod.com.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
No,
would
those are
love
good
to hear
places.
from you.
And then we will we'll be back very soon with another live stream. We're going to take
Yeah,
next Friday off. We'll have a video up in our place because Dr. Asha
yeah.
is probably off, traveling, to someplace far and exotic and awesome. And you don't want to just see me
You
because
do
that would just
know
be boring.
you do know that there's still travel restrictions, right, Steve?
Ah, yes.
You do realize that, right? In my mind, I'm traveling all the time. That's for sure.
Uma just said thank you. I think she was saying thank you. I'm glad you, Steve, are not doing the show by yourself next week. I'm
No,
pretty sure that's what
not at all.
she's like. This should just be conversations with Asha and let Steve be behind the scenes. I'm pretty sure that's what she's
Not
thinking.
at all.
Yeah, travel restrictions, but maybe in your mind you're going somewhere really awesome, or but
Yes,
no, you have a
always.
conflict next week, and actually I do as well. So we will have a new video that we've got up.
Yeah.
Very soon. We'll get that posted next Friday for you, so that we don't miss or lose any momentum. But if you have any questions or you have any topics that you would
Mhm.
like us to cover in the future, just one more time, Asha, if you don't mind, can you remind people how they can get that in front of us?
Yep. So they can go to our website and actually they can email us at info with conversations. No, I'm sorry. Info at conversations. I'm like, what am I saying? Info at conversations with ashandsteve.com. Or they can go to our website, but also you can message us on Facebook as
Yeah.
well. Facebook and Instagram, just
Join us on the
reach out to us.
Facebook community. We need more people there, and
Yes,
we want to continue these
yes.
conversations online. And I know you can't see this, but
Hmm.
Gayatri,
Guy three.
Gayatri
Yeah.
just said it was
Guy
nice
3.
listening to you both. So, oh, that was nice. I know you're
Thank you.
probably just being polite there. I know it was really nice listening to Asha. But
No, she would tell you, Steve.
yeah,
No, I'm just
oh, good.
kidding.
Oh, that's awesome.
She's not shy.
Oh yeah. Okay. Good. Good. Well, that's good. So that comes from the heart. I like that. That's fantastic. Yeah. So back to the Facebook thing. Definitely join us on Facebook. We want to start a little bit of a movement
Yeah.
off these episodes. Get conversations happening. We actually would like to connect people from around the world, because we have a
Yes.
lot of folks that are listening to us from all parts of the world, and are getting some value from our podcast and these live streams, and we greatly appreciate it. So definitely, no matter how or where how you got here, we definitely appreciate you listening and giving us your time and attention. We don't take that lightly, and we hope that we're bringing content of value to you. And we'll be back very soon with another engaging conversation with the amazing Dr. Asha. Oh,
Sounds good, Steve.
and Uma
Yeah.
says, please cover mental health in young teens. So we will do
Oh,
that.
yeah.
We're adding
We
that
will
to the
definitely
list.
do
Yeah,
that,
that's
Uma.
a
Thank
fantastic
you.
suggestion.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Uma. Yeah, we will definitely we will do another one, because I think that's
Yes.
so critical. And Dr. Asha and I both have experience in that space. So I think that's really
Yeah.
would be good. All right, Asha, well, you
Great.
have a fantastic rest of your day. I mean, I know your day
Thanks,
is
you too.
over pretty much there, which I'm
It's almost
envious
over.
of, but I'm just starting mine here in the US. I'm
Yeah.
sad. This
It's okay. It'll go by fast.
this might be the highlight of my whole day. I don't know. Oh, it usually is every time that I see you. So it's fun. But thank you for another great conversation. This was a powerful one, and I think an important one for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you for everybody that joined us and will join us on the replay. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.
Yep, absolutely. Take care.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye
Till
bye.
next time.